Hello and welcome to the Fantasy Life Show. Happy Tuesday and happy week 7, everybody. Hope you got those 6-0 fantasy teams chilling like villains. If not, we got some work to do. Either way, it is indeed a great day to be great. So, action-packed show. We got Monday Night Football takeaways, some sheeshes, some utilization, waiver wire goodness, all that and so much more. And of course, the man joining me and making it all happen, the one, the only, Dwain, the Rock McFarland. Dwain, you know, not the cleanest Monday Night Football game, but as we always say, even bad Monday Night Football better than no Monday Night Football.
Hey, head coach fired, offensive coordinator demoted. Everything's right for Aaron Rodgers, right? You got to win. You got a good defense against a struggling Bills team. You got the victory. Oh, wait. You can't hit a field goal, Ian. Can't hit a field goal. The wind is just too much for these kickers. I was just imagining what was going on in the Hartitz household at that moment when these kickers couldn't even hit an extra point. I was just wondering, like, what was your conversation like with the misses?
I was mostly just yelling at the Guardians not scoring enough runs against the Yankees, but also certainly freaking out about the kickers going on as well. But Dwayne, you know what? Throughout all that, it was good to see Rodgers in the postgame interview just take responsibility, really take it on. No, he actually threw
That's
Mike
what the team
Williams
needs.
Under the bus.
Yeah, team needs accountability. So definitely, like, any chance you get to throw a teammate under the bus, you should definitely do that.
Gotta do it. Well, okay,
and
guys,
to be clear,
Bills did take down.
I think Mike Williams was running to the open spot, Ian. He was running to the open area of the field. Aaron Rodgers decided to throw that behind him into the coverage. So, I mean, I'm not Aaron Rodgers. I'm not a doctor. He would know better than I, but I don't know. I'm kind of siding with Mike Williams on that one. He was running to the open space.
Kind of looked like Breece Hall was wide open underneath too. If you want to put your film goggles on and go down that route,
let's move
just
on.
saying. Yeah, let's just devote 60 minutes to this. All right. Long story short, Bills took down the Jets 23-20, covering as 1.5 point favorites. The over did cash at 41.5. Again, 22 flags in this one really was ridiculous. But Dwayne, you know who wasn't flagged? Actually, they probably were, but it didn't stop him from having a big game. Bills RB1, Ray Davis. That's right. James Cook was a late, pretty much scratch on Monday night. Thank you to all the insiders who really were just on top of this throughout the entire weekend. Super good job, using their sources and giving us that extra, information that, yeah, I'm just kidding. We never get anything from them that you couldn't get from a local beat writer or a team account, but that's just life apparently. So Dwayne, it was the Ray Davis show. I sadly, benched him for Ty Johnson in my home league after seeing the note in warmups that Ty Johnson was followed by Frank Gore. Not great, Dwayne. But you know what? We'll watch the film and get better. And that film is going to look pretty good because, again, Ray Davis, 97 rushing yards, even 55 receiving yards. Honestly, had almost nearly a more fantasy-friendly role than what we see out of James Cook when everyone is healthy. What did you think about the rookie fourth-round pick and his pretty much NFL, starting debut?
Yeah, he essentially took over the James Cook role. Ty Johnson stayed in the role that he's been in. He played 33% of the snaps, Johnson did. He had 27% route participation, so he was really just the passing down guy. Now, he got the start in the game. He got the first carry. It actually looked nice on it, bounced it outside, got a first down right away. But Ray Davis just ran with more power. Ray Davis showed that decisiveness that we talked about in college. Even came down with a long pass from Josh Allen. It was pretty shaky. I didn't know if he was going to catch it there for a second, but you've mentioned it before. Ray Davis, not known as like this great receiver in college, but he was really good. He's not a downfield kind of weapon like what we saw there, but he is very capable, like in the check down game. So I think the real question here comes back to, okay, with Ray Davis coming out and clearly owning the role, 60% of the snaps, 67% of the rushing attempts, taking that James Cook role. When I watched him, Ian, I just see a different element to his game than we've seen from James Cook. Now, James Cook has been good as well. A guy that's got great acceleration. He's going to win with these subtle moves, right at the line of scrimmage, trying to make defenders miss, but he doesn't really push the pile. I think they have a nice combination here with James Cook and Ray Davis, and that creates a little bit of doubt for me moving forward with James Cook. However, I will say this. We have no clue what these coaches are going to do. With all these running backs this weekend, we'll talk about Tyrone Tracy in a little bit. It's so funny when I see people come out and they're like, Ray Davis is going to have a role, man. We don't know. We really don't know. We see this all the time. We see guys like this come out and play great, and we're like, man, like, how do you put him back on the bench? And then they do. The very next week, they put him right back on the bench. And the week before, we saw Ray Davis almost not get a snap. He played 3% of the snaps. So weird things happen. don't get overly confident in your take, but I think the big takeaway here, Ian, is that Ray Davis looked really good. And if this opportunity did continue, if it did expand, he's a guy that you would like to have on your fantasy bench.
Looked really good, man. And then obviously the big takeaway is, yeah, he is secured as the handcuff behind James Cook, who knows, Dwayne, maybe he misses a week, maybe he misses, 10. I do think he'll be back sooner
we won't know.
Rather than later. We won't know, though. Either way, that's the important part to note here. So I do think again, we knew he was injured. I hope you guys did have insurance, but, Colts and Bills, can we please just get some information? Will be much appreciated. So did not see Frank Gore Jr. at all. Unfortunate there. But otherwise, yeah, nice performance from the Bills offense, especially Josh Allen, Dwayne, obviously going up against Sauce Gardner and company. No easy task. 215 yards passing, though, and 2 touchdowns, and vultured away a touchdown from Ray Davis. Again, you're very happy if you started Ray, 150 plus total yards, but that was tilting, man. Very sheeshy first drive where he gets down the 1 yard line, not once, but twice. Josh calls his own number and QB sneaks his way into the end zone. So Dawson Knox also caught a touchdown. Dalton Kincaid, nice game, team high 7
Real
targets,
quick.
only other player. Yeah, go ahead.
Yeah, on Kincaid, just for you folks out there, I know you're just looking for a glimmer of hope. Over the last 3 games, Kincaid has a 26% target share, Ian. Now, it has not resulted in many fantasy points. He's averaging 8.7 over that stretch, but he's got a 7.0 utilization score over that range. And so 66% of tight ends that he compared to over the last 4 years of data have at least been a low-end tight end 1. I know that's not what you guys were hoping for, but he is actually trending in the right direction. The problem is, Ian, when you watch him, he's not a tackle breaker. He's not working these unique choice routes or anything like that down the field. It's just, I don't know. Even though I'm seeing the targets here on the paper, when I watch Dalton Kincaid, I'm like, man, he just doesn't look like a first-round NFL talent yet. But there's nothing else in Buffalo, guys. Nothing else until Khalil Shakir's healthy. So Kincaid is a guy that he's at least trending in the right direction. And, you probably don't have better options on the waiver wire anyway.
Normally not a tackle breaker. I do agree with you. But the first reception he had last night was pretty sweet. Actually thought it was Dawson Knox for a second with the way he then actually did bust through those 2 tackles. So you did mention once Shakir is back to 100%, he was only at a 50% route rate last night. Keon Coleman, 83%, Mac Hollins, 77%, and Curtis Samuel at 40%. So maybe Curtis getting a little healthier as well. He almost had a receiving touchdown, just a little bit long from Josh Allen. So that is your Bills wrap up. But Dwayne, let's talk about the Jets, Jets, 113 points through 6 weeks, which is exactly how many they had last year through 6 weeks as well. But in all seriousness, this was one of their better offensive performances of the season. 393 total yards. That is second to only the Patriots game, and only the second time all year they've had more than 270 total yards of offense. So bar wasn't exactly overly high, Dwayne, and we were getting our jokes out about Rodgers, but as a whole, this was an encouraging performance against a tough Bills defense.
Yeah, the big takeaway here is first game with a new offensive coordinator, and man, they went way back to Breece Hall. 86% of the snaps, 86% of the rushing attempts, 76% route participation. Dude put up a 9.7 utilization score. That beat his week 1 score when we were so excited about him. Again, it's one data point. They could go back to giving Braylon Allen a little bit more work next week, and that might concern us. But right now, there's a chance here, Ian, that they're actually going to say, okay, new regime calling the offense, we're actually just going to feed Breece Hall. And if that's the case, you got a shot at having a top 3 back. He scored 21.9 fantasy points last night. So this is a major positive for Breece Hall. If you're the Braylon Allen manager, he's still the handcuff to Breece Hall, and you were pretty much already struggling to try to find a way to get him into your lineup anyway. So nothing's really changed for you. He just doesn't carry any potential standalone value like on a bye week or anything like that right now. Again, one data point. We'll see what next week looks like. But big step forward for Breece Hall if this continues.
Another nice performance by Garrett Wilson as well. 107 yards and a touchdown on 10 targets. Man, probably should have had a second touchdown, but, took a tough hit in the end zone, from 14 yards out. So not the most, sheeshy drop you'll ever see. But again, it was, in the breadbasket for the potential score there. Allen Lazard, your favorite player, Dwayne, another big game, 114 yards and a touchdown on a ridiculous Hail Mary at the end of halftime. Aaron Rodgers is just so freaking good at those. Not sure how he keeps getting away with it. And speaking of Rodgers, again, 294 yards and those pair of touchdowns, but also the game-ending pick, who, again, he blamed on Mike Williams. So, guys, that is your Monday Night Football recap. Now we got tons of sheesh and utilization goodness to get to, but first going to run through some other news tidbits from an eventful Monday in the NFL. At quarterback, we did get confirmation from Shane Steichen that Anthony Richardson should be ready to go against the Dolphins. He will be taking Joe Flacco's place under center, assuming he is healthy enough to do so. Browns head coach Kevin Stefanski reaffirms that he'll stick with Deshaun Watson, quote unquote, gives them the best chance to win. Go ahead and make your own jokes with that one. Dolphins head coach Mike McDaniel confirmed Tua is expecting to play again. He is eligible to return after this week, so good job by you, Dwayne Schefter, getting the lowdown on that. Honestly, I think, Dwayne, you might have the best scoop of any insider this year. I don't think I've heard any of them go out on a limb like that. At running back, the Panthers are opening the practice window for Jonathan Brooks. Not a guarantee he'll be back this week, but at least a step in the right direction. Meanwhile, Browns running back Jerome Ford, week to week with a hamstring injury, should be getting Nick Chubb back anyway. Titans running back Tajay Spears, hamstring, expecting to miss week 7. However, Brian Callahan did say week to week, but should be a shorter absence. So Tony Pollard for now, but Spears not looking like an IR candidate. And then Bucs head coach Todd Bowles accordingly says Sean Tucker deserves more opportunities after his big week 6. So maybe a 3-headed monster, if you will, in Tampa Bay emerging. At wide receiver, Ian Rappaport said Cooper Kupp had a positive workout on Monday, and his return in week 7 remains possible, coming back from that ankle injury. However, Puka Nacua will not be returning to practice, so looking like the Cooper Kupp show at least for a week or two. Rashid Shaheed, we'll get to it more in a little bit, but he is dealing with a knee injury ahead of Thursday night that Rap Sheet described as concerning. His status going forward is to be decided. Nick Underhill followed up and said that he is getting his knee checked at the moment, and there is some concern he could miss time. Also, not practicing for the Saints, Chris Olave with that concussion. Again, not looking good with the short week ahead of Thursday. Packers wide receiver Dontavian Wicks, week to week with the shoulder injury. We cannot have nice things. However, he did seem to avoid a substantial injury, which is good. Zay Jones activated the roster. Ricky Pearsall practice window open. Taysom Hill in limited practice, even though he is dealing with the fractured ribs. That's good to hear. Eagles lost their left tackle for a couple of weeks, and the Commanders lost Jonathan Allen to a torn pec for the season. That sucks. So, guys, that is your rapid recap. And now, before we get to the sheeshes of the week, a quick word to our friends over at Knockaround. Get my glasses on here. Bills edition. Shout out to the winners. Hey, everyone, head to knockaround.com and pick up your new go-to pair of polarized shades for less than $50 with over 25 frame styles and dozens of colors. You are guaranteed to find sunglasses that look good and protect your eyes with full UV 400 protection. And be sure to check out Knockaround's officially licensed NFL collection so you can rep your team all week, just like maybe these Bills ones, and hopefully all the way through the playoffs. Visit knockaround.com and use code LIFE for free shipping on your order. Sheesh is right, Dwayne. And as always, there was plenty of it in week 6. And we're going to start things off with our unrealized air yards leaderboard. As always, we are just helping add some context behind the total incompletions that each player got. If Dwayne is standing 50 yards downfield and I throw him a pass that lands at his feet, that is 50 unrealized air yards. If he's standing right next to me, that is 0 unrealized air yards. Of course, so it goes in the box score as just one incomplete target regardless. So with that in mind, Dwayne, we did have 6 players rack up at least 70. Rashid Shaheed led the week with 149. DK Metcalf 148. Calvin Ridley 133. Marvin Mims 107. Alec Pierce 105. And George Pickens 71 as well. I will say Mims's were more of the prayer yards variety, which has been the case in Denver for most of the year. Pickens, though, probably should have had a touchdown at the end of regulation with a better pass from Justin Fields. Alec Pierce got missed on a 60-yard touchdown downfield. As much as we all love Joe Flacco, guys, Richardson's actually been more accurate on passes thrown at least 20 yards downfield. Don't shoot the messenger. Calvin Ridley also, man, if you've seen those targets, rough afternoon for the entire Titans offense. However, was open enough on a potential 26-yard score that unfortunately Levis just got hit as he was throwing with. And then DK Metcalf, Dwayne, probably the poster child of the sheesh in week 6. 52-yard touchdown nullified by an illegal shift penalty. 49-yard potential touchdown underthrown by Geno Smith. And then right before halftime, potential 2-yard touchdown, but his toe was out of bounds. So again, so sheeshy for DK Metcalf, but better days should be ahead. The question, Dwayne, is if better days will be ahead for Rashid Shaheed. Obviously dealing with Spencer Rattler under center, but now this knee injury adds a lot more uncertainty. If we do see Shaheed out for this Thursday night matchup against the Broncos, which seems like a possibility, who would you expect to benefit?
Man, it depends, because Chris Olave has also got a concussion, so he's probably not going to be ready for a Thursday night game. Like, I don't see him being able to clear protocol. So that means we're going to have Bub Means and Mason Tipton. Those are going to be your two guys. The good news is Spencer Rattler should really know both of those guys because they're all backups. So they're probably out there running, an offense for the defense part of the time in practice. So they should have a good feel for each other. But honestly, I would want to stay completely away from the Saints offense. Alvin Kamara, obviously, if you've got him, you've got to start him. So real quick, just on DK Metcalf, Ian, though, what is so interesting about this is he has a 23% target share. That's right in line with what he's done for the last 3 years. But he's on pace to set a record for targets per game. Right now, he's setting at 9. And it all comes down to how the Seahawks are running this offense. They rank first in drop back rate over expectation at 9% over the league average. And then plays per minute over expected. They are 21% over the league average. So they are the fastest offense running the most plays. And it's always in the passing department. So that fuels them to 46 pass plays per game, man. That is so astronomical. It's just insane. I don't know that it can keep up, but what I will tell you, they're on the extreme end. They're not going to come back to the average. They're going to be one of the most pass heavy teams for the rest of the season. And that's what's been huge for DK Metcalf. So even when you look and you're like, oh, look at target shares and these things, it's the way the offense is running that's really unlocking a new level for DK Metcalf. And that really makes him a borderline wide receiver 1 the rest of the way because of how pass friendly they are.
I do want to go back to the Saints, Dwayne, real quick on one thing, because I'm with you. Can't really trust any of these wide receivers. Although our own, fantasy life for Chris Allen is going, off the tracks with his bub Means Love. That was a fun segment on a Monday show. But how about Juwan Johnson, Dwayne? Because I'm looking at it right now. Utilization report game log, 68% routes in week 5, 75% last week. And with those injuries, actually set season high marks in terms of his total snaps out of the slot and out wide. So Johnson is someone who we have liked over the years in terms of his pure receiving talent. And now Saints might not really have anywhere else to go with the football.
Yeah, I guess. I still really don't like it. And it would come down to is Taysom Hill playing? Because if Taysom Hill's playing in the games with Taysom Hill, Juwan Johnson stuck around a 50% route participation. The games without Taysom Hill, he's going to be around that 70% mark. But if you were in an absolute pinch, I could see it. But it's kind of similar to Cade Otton, Noah Fan. There's just so many guys that are in that range, just throw a dart. And I think I probably slightly lean to the offenses that I like a little bit more than the one that's going to have the backup quarterback under center on a short week of rest. So Juwan Johnson, absolute pinch, no Taysom Hill. Yeah, Ian, I think we could go there, but overall still not that excited.
Also, tough matchup against the Broncos, who might not have Pat Surtain dealing with his own concussion, but still, Rattler, Broncos, we're not loving that situation. Let's talk about our other category of Sheesh, Dwayne, which, again, you guys can find all this and so much more for free in my Sheesh article at FantasyLife.com. But yes, there were quite a few drop touchdowns, and almost all of them actually came from the Jacksonville Jaguars. Gabe Davis from 12 yards out and 36 yards out let very reasonable passes hit him in the hands and fall incomplete. Brian Thomas, brutal drop from 15 yards out. And Christian Kirk, maybe, you don't want to say it was a drop because it hit him in the face mask instead of the hands, but probably should have caught it either way. So really was a sheeshy afternoon for Trevor Lawrence and company. I will say, Dwayne, only one of these, the 12-yard touchdown to Gabe Davis, actually, that came early in the game. 3 of these drops actually came on the same drive later on one that ended in a touchdown. So it's not like that T-Law was, all these drops away from throwing for 5 or 6 touchdowns or anything like that. Really wouldn't have made that big of a difference, just would have helped speed up, again, that a drive that was ultimately a touchdown anyway. So, we've now got, though, Dwayne, a couple weeks of Trevor Lawrence playing a bit better. He has been a slow starter throughout his career. Any hope we start seeing this Jaguars offense ascending up? Because I know at a minimum, you did like what you saw from Evan Engram in his first game back.
Yeah, Evan Engram coming back. We'll get to him in a little bit, but Trevor Lawrence is the big thing, Ian. You've talked about it. He's a late bloomer every season, and it frustrates us. We're like, why can't we just get this early in the season? And we're out, and then he's gonna have enough good games, and the Jaguars are obviously paying him that we're gonna be looking at it next year and be like, maybe the guy can play good the whole season, and then he'll just toy with us again and not do it. But the primary point here is he does have multiple good weapons, and that's always going to give you a chance. I honestly can't explain it, Ian. When I watch Trevor Lawrence, he looks like he's fine. To me, he looks like he throws a good ball, it's on target. I don't understand all the bad luck that he's had with the drops. He still does some really stupid stuff at times, but overall, I don't understand the drops. I can't explain them because they really are catches that you see quite often made. Last year, we saw the whole thing with Calvin Ridley, and now it feels like it's just repeating itself this year. So it's just one of those weird things. Is there something there that we don't see, or is this really just random and it's just crazy that it keeps happening over and over to the same player?
I mean, I don't think we would exactly, even when they had Ridley, be ranking these Jaguars pass catchers as anything close to this great group in the NFL. We like Christian Kirk. Evan Engram, though, someone that I don't think Giants fans were, exactly crying about losing in free agency. Gabe Davis, I mean, I don't think we need to go too deep into that one. So I would say it mostly is more so on the pass catchers because that's where I would mostly lean with the drops. But yeah, Dwayne, it really has been a situation unlike any other in the NFL. Great stat from Yahoo Sports' Nate Tice, how the Jaguars lead the NFL in drops with 74 and EPA loss with them since dating back to the 2022 season. So has been quite the Sheesh time in Jacksonville. However, they were not the only pass catchers to drop some touchdowns in week 6. Also had George Pickens from 3 yards out right after that aforementioned, again, better ball, missed opportunity. So the Steelers were trying to get him into the end zone, just didn't quite work out. Also, Tyler Lockett from 9 yards out, let one bounce off his hands. And again, mentioned that Garrett Wilson in the chest, took a big hit, but still a drop in the box score. So guys, those were the top sheeshes of the week. Now time for some utilization goodness. But first, a quick word from our friends over at Experian. Experian is to your finances what FantasyLife is to your fantasy league. It is a tool and resource designed to make your life easier. And accordingly, the Experian app is free to download and serves as a one-stop shop for managing your financial health. With so many spending and subscription details to track, let Experian handle for you the help you find and cancel your unwanted or forgotten subscriptions, helping you save money and focus on what really matters, winning your fantasy league. Download the Experian app today. Just note that results will vary. Not all subs are eligible. Savings not guaranteed. Paid membership with connected payment account is required, and you can see Experian.com for details. It is Utilization Tuesday, the Utilization Report, Dwayne, presented by DraftKings. Talk about a great day to be great. You have grinded the film, grinded the numbers, and now it is time to bless everyone with the upgrades, downgrades, waiver wire goodness, all that and so much more. So let's get right into it, Dwayne, with an upgrade for Chargers. Clear-cut RB1. No, not Kamani Vidal. JK Dobbins coming off a game where he had 27 touches for 102 yards and a touchdown. Wasn't going great for him, Dwayne, before that bye. Starts off the year with those back-to-back top 5 finishes, then falls to RB36 and RB35, RB11 though in week 6. Sounds like you're expecting more of the same moving forward.
Yeah, and a big part of week 3 and 4, that downturn was just a completely beat up offense. We had 2 offensive line missing. You had Justin Herbert barely able to even walk. So, I mean, there were a lot of challenges at that point with the Chargers offense, but they get the bye week at the right time, come back healthy, and then we see them coming out of the bye just completely feed JK Dobbins. They put Gus Edwards on IR, so he's out for at least 4 weeks. And guys, here's the thing. He was already taking the job away. This was already happening. We just hadn't seen the results yet because of some of those issues with the offense that Ian talked about and then I just mentioned. So if you look over the last 3 games, man, 64%, 72%, and 73% of the snaps for Dobbins. Now looking at his utilization score for the year, Ian, it strongly points towards an opportunity for a running back 1 finish. 7% of them have finished as a top 6 running back. When we look at his comps, 43% have been a low-end running back 1. So 50% of the time, it works all the time. Ian, you've got a running back 1 right now in JK Dobbins. 36% of the time, he's been more of that high-end running back 2. So I've upgraded him to that's the perfect spot to upgrade someone, Ian, to the phrase that's always been yours, and I'm going to steal it because it can't add up any better for a player like this. He's a borderline running back 1 the rest of the way. Yeah. If we see another strong performance like this, though, he could move up even more. One of the main things he's got going for him here, Ian, is the Chargers, man. They are a run-heavy team. We talked about DK Metcalf benefiting from being on a pass-heavy team. We're talking about a defense or an offense right now with a minus 4.1% drop back rate over expected. That's one of the lowest numbers in the league. So we know Harbaugh, we know Greg Roman, they want to run the football, and J.K. Dobbins is their man. I will say Kamani Vidal did come out and take some of the passing game work, caught a nice little, bullet route up the sideline, where he caught for a touchdown, looked really good in that facet of the game. And he took some of the passing down reps. I think that's going to continue. I think Vidal's role actually could expand a little bit. But I still think that J.K. Dobbins is very safe to be a guy getting 65% of the snaps on a team that wants to run the ball a lot, and he looks really good, Ian. This was in a tough matchup against the Broncos. So, I mean, you come out and you get 25 carries, you get the job done with 18 fantasy points. Some of these other defenses that he's going to get to face here coming up, if he gets 25 carries in those games, I mean, we're going to be talking about 25, 30 fantasy points.
Cardinals and Saints on the docket next. Two defenses that we have certainly seen be had by running backs of varying shapes and sizes. So you mentioned, Dwayne, few offenses want to run the ball more than the Chargers. Specifically, only the Steelers and Ravens actually have a lower pass play rate in neutral situations on the season. So that is your JK Dobbins propaganda for the day. But also, we do have to talk about these Texans wide receivers, Dwayne. Both Tank Dell and Stephon Diggs coming off top 15 finishes in their first game without Nico Collins, who will miss at least the next 3 while he remains on IR with that hamstring injury. So yeah, turns out if we can have human beings with a pulse catching passes from CJ Stroud, good things are generally going to happen, Dwayne.
Yeah, man. I mean, it was really a great day for both of these guys. We saw Tank Dell come out with a 91% route participation to lead the team. And then we saw Stephon Diggs right behind them, both of them getting their targets as well. Dell led the way with a 31% target share. That is absolutely elite. So that connection that we were a little bit worried about between him and CJ Stroud, just a few close misses, felt a little bit like the forgotten man. Obviously, when you have Nico Collins, that can make you a little bit of a forgotten man because Nico's an absolute beast. But Dell really showing out and showing that he is a healthy player. He is a guy that can still score the fantasy points because we were worried coming off of that late season injury with the fracture and then having the gunshot wound, obviously, to the leg makes things pretty tough when that happens to you in May. But Dell looked really good in this one. Diggs also doing his thing. The one big thing I would note about Diggs, Ian, is he had really been this low ADOT slot player. Well, now with Nico Collins out, his average depth of target shot way up this weekend. So he led the team in air yards. So that unlocks more potential upside for Diggs. So moving forward, until we get Nico Collins back, these guys are both borderline wide receiver ones. These are guys that, look, you're at a minimum, they're locked into your wide receiver 2 spot, depending on what else you're looking at in your lineup. I mean, they might be your wide receiver 1 for the week. The bottom line is this. If you have them on your team, you're starting them. You're feeling really great about Tank Dell as well as Stephon Diggs. I have seen a little bit of chatter, Ian. Get your thoughts on this. Folks out there, now's the time to sell on Tank Dell before Nico Collins comes back. And I could get on board with that. But I don't know that I want to do it yet. Like, I'd like to get at least another game of Tank Dell, maybe 2, and then try moving on from the guy. But if you are absolutely loaded and someone else is really needing something, I would be willing to trade Tank Dell. Here's the one thing, though. Weird things happen. Like, Nico Collins has had an astronomical target share to lead the year for a guy in an offense like this. And he is an alpha. He's a really great player. But you could trade away Tank Dell and be looking back, even once Nico's back, and be going, wow, I shouldn't have traded away Tank Dell. Because this is just a great offense. We've got CJ Stroud. We've got a good play caller. There's a lot of good things going on for the Texans. And we just also don't know what else will happen. Nico Collins, knock on wood, don't want him to be injured again, but he could come back and aggravate his hamstring and then miss another 4 games, and then you're wishing you hadn't given away Tank Dell. So my big point being, really think through it. So what are your thoughts on it, Ian, on trading away Tank Dell?
I mean, we don't know when Collins is going to be back, man. Yeah, it'd be sweet if he only misses 4 games, but we've certainly seen hamstrings last longer, and that's even before the potential re-aggravation. I mean, the schedule coming up, Dwayne, is fantastic. I do not want to trade Tank Dell right now because I think there are more than enough opportunities to probably be able to sell higher. We got a shootout between the Packers and Texans this week. After that, the Colts. My God, we love starting wide receivers against the Colts. Yeah, week 9 against the Jets. That's not going to be easy. But then the Lions and the Cowboys? No, I'm not selling, Dwayne.
I'm telling you, I know, man. I feel like Tank Dell could be the wide receiver 1 in fantasy. It's going to him and Justin Jefferson and Diggs, they're all going to be battling. I'm telling you, if you go look at these schedules over the next 4 games, what the Texans have and then what the Vikings have, it might be a duel between Stroud and Darnold to see who's the best quarterback over the next 4 weeks because the matchups are just so sweet.
Yeah. Again, very nice upgrades there for the Texans wide receivers and also our guys JK Dobbins. That said, Dwayne, more of a wait and see approach on the current Giants RB1 Tyron Tracy, but that is just while Devin Singletary is injured. Look, I'm not saying Tracy hasn't earned more work, and at a minimum, we have a Ray Davis situation because elite handcuff usage for Tracy in week 6. All I have to say though, Dwayne, maybe not someone we necessarily want to blow all the fab on if he's still available because this is a situation that certainly still seems to be evolving.
Yeah, and you know your league. If you're playing in a sicko league, you may have to blow more. If you're playing in a sicko league, Tyrone Tracy's not available. So we don't even have to worry about it. He's been gone for the draft since he was drafted. Maybe he gets dropped occasionally in those kind of leagues. But you know what your league looks like. You know what your roster looks like. And so you've kind of got to, figure out how to handle that. I put him at 15 to 20% in the Fab tool over at FantasyLife.com. I think some of the other rankers or some of the other folks working in the waiver wire tool with me, they felt a little more strongly, and some people felt less strongly about, Tracy. I think I was kind of in the middle of where they are because we just really don't know. Here's what we want to say. The positives first. Tracy's looked phenomenal, Ian. Like for a guy that was a receiver, just 3 seasons ago, I mean, he looks really good. He has a natural feel for the game. His yards before contact are really great. Part of that comes down to vision. Part of that comes down to the blocking from the offensive line, for the Giants. So there's a couple things going on there. But he's shown that he's capable of being on the field more. But we don't know for sure what in the world the Giants coaching staff is going to do. And I want to make sure everyone understands this. While Tracy has looked really good, Devin Singletary wasn't looking bad before he left the field. I get it. We want to replace Devin Singletary. We've been wanting to replace Devin Singletary since he was born. This man is used to this. Not you. Remember what was it? We go back. It was Zach Moss, right? And then it was Damian Pierce, and then now we're here on Tyrone Tracy. I do think Tyrone Tracy actually might be the best of those 3 guys that we hoped would replace Devin Singletary. But if we look at it, okay, average yards after contact this year, 2.7 for Tracy. That's below the league average at 2.9, 3.2 for Singletary. He's been better. And when you go watch the film, that's one of Tracy's weaknesses. He kind of goes down at first contact. Kind of makes sense. He used to be a receiver. He's not used to trying to have to break tackles. Missed tackles forced per attempt. 9% for Tyrone Tracy, 36% for Devin Singletary. Why do I mention these 2 things? Not because they unlock a ton of fantasy points, but because they're 2 things that we've seen historically running backs own. These things are sticky to them, and coaches do often equate them to being, okay, which player's actually better. And so what I'm saying here is it's probably at a minimum going to be a split between these 2 guys, but it could be Tyrone Tracy completely back in a reserve role where he's really just a handcuff. So whenever you hear these people come out and tell you Tyrone Tracy, he's getting more work, you can't put the genie back in the bottle. You hear Ray Davis gonna get more work. I get it. It's good intentions because the players looked good in. The coaches have proven over and over and over, we really don't know. So just be honest with yourself, look in the mirror, and what you have to tell yourself is, I like Tyrone Tracy as a talent. I'm just putting a chip on him. He may not be able to be in my starting lineup next week, or if I put him in there, he might score 3 fantasy points. And if you can be okay with that, you're fine, because he could still have value. Devin Singletary could get hurt again. Devin Singletary might not play next week, or Tyrone Tracy actually really might be good enough to take over the starting role at some point, but we don't know. So you just kind of really think about the whole range of outcomes before you put your fab dollars down, Ian. And that's what we try to do in the utilization report. So if you guys want more details on it, you can go check it out. It's free, just like the Sheesh Report over on FantasyLife.com. And I walk you through what the range of outcomes are for a lot of these different players based on what we've seen historically.
And also not exactly, dealing with the 2023 Dolphins or one of these sick offenses that we just can't wait to get a piece of.
Right.
Giants, 29th ranked scoring offense, not exactly the world's most fantasy-friendly group for running backs, particularly if it's going to be split up, which I am with you. I do think it will be. So tough matchups for the run game coming up. We got the Eagles and Steelers over the next 2 weeks, each of them top 12 in terms of PPR points per game allowed to opposing RBs. So wait and see on Tyrone Tracy. However, Dwayne, we do not have to wait and see on our next running back, Joe Mixon. He was a PPR RB2 in week 1, and then he goes ahead and misses, 3 or 4 weeks with that ankle injury, comes back, PPR RB2 in week 6, just like nothing changed.
He's averaging 27 fantasy points per game in his 2 games that he's been healthy. So that's pretty good. We're throwing out the game where he got the high ankle sprain from the hip drop tackle. So look, if you've got Mixon, you're loving it. He's a mid-range running back 1 the rest of the way. We're just hoping that the ankle can can hold up. If you saw the long run last week, you definitely saw a little hitch in the giddy up. He's not 100% right now, but you just talked about the Giants being an offense we can't necessarily get that excited about being associated with. We love having players associated with the Texans offense. And guys, realize Bobby Slowick, man, this guy comes from that Kyle Shanahan tree. He knows how to get a running game going. In fact, the other guy we just talked about, Devin Singletary, was a running back one down the stretch last year in this offense. Joe Mixon, we know, is a better player than that. So I think we can feel really good about expectations here. And Mixon, the other thing is, it looked in the final box score like he was really limited due to the injury, but it was just really a blowout script. If we look at the game before it got into blowout conditions, 69% of the team's rushing attempts, that's elite, 50% route participation. Nice. So really right in line with what we saw from him in week one. A little bit of risk here. Obviously could get re-injured. He's an older player, a lot of touches on that frame for Joe Mixon, but man, the upside is absolutely astronomical, and we've seen it the 2 full games he's played.
Also did see last week, Dwain, a really nice touchdown run from Dameon Pierce, someone who looks to be the cemented handcuff behind Mixon. Yeah,
while everyone else is going out and spending quite a bit of fab on some of these other handcuff, plays, if you can't get them, Pierce is really a nice backup plan that you're probably going to get for almost nothing. Not a lot of people there are a lot of handcuff names. So each week when you talk about fab, you talk about the way you want to work your waiver wire. One thing you want to do is step back and take a snapshot of what the week looks like. And this week, not a lot of wide receivers we're talking about. Not a lot at the quarterback or tight end positions. We've got Drake Maye sitting out there. So if you need a quarterback and your guy's on bye and you look at the other team and they don't have a QB2, you're probably having to bid up to go get Drake Maye if you're in a league where, most of the quarterbacks are taken. But at running back, man, there is a ton. There's Isaac Guerrero. There's Tyrone Tracy. There's Ray Davis. We've got Tyler Algier available in too many leagues. And then it kind of gets to a point where what you're talking about here, and like Pierce gets lost in the mix, like in that shuffle. And he's a guy that really could be in the same role as what we're talking about for all these other guys. And he's going to go later. Now, you've mentioned it before, Ogunbowale, a household favorite over at the Hartitz household. They don't like the Schultz family for the Texans, but they do. They are Ogunbowale supporters. So, Ian, I know you guys have your personal choices that you like to make, and that is your choice. It's up to you. You get to vote the way that you want. But whenever we look at what we have, with Ogunbowale, like he will steal some of the passing down work. But at the same time, like I don't think we can be overly certain as to what his role would look like. And we anticipate like the Texans leading, quite a bit. So I think there's going to be plenty of game strips where if Pierce did have to step in, man, you might have a running back one. He could be the next guy. If Joe Mixon went down this weekend, next weekend it could be everyone saying Dameon Pierce is the must add of the week.
Again, really nice returning from injury performances by both Mixon and Dame Pierce. Same thing goes, though, Dwain, for Evan Engram, someone who, again, had over 140 targets last year. Looked like he was well on his way to getting back to that sort of volume in week 6 in London. 10 targets, caught all of them for 102 yards. Now, wouldn't be an Evan Engram performance without a mistake thrown in there. He did lose a fumble, but we have seen now this connection, Dwain, really persist. And hey, man, as long as Doug Peterson's going to keep that job, the one thing he has done pretty freaking great over the years is enable a fantasy-friendly tight end.
Yeah, he hasn't done many other things very well, but he has enabled that friendly tight end one role. And I don't know. He probably has just had good tight ends, to be honest. So what are we talking about with Doug Peterson? True. I will say he did revive Engram. If you looked at Engram and the way he was used with the Giants, more as a seam stretcher, kind of like what we see with Kyle Pitts. And that can be a struggle at times. There's going to be more variance in the way your box scores work out. But when you look at Evan Ingram's role right now with the Jaguars, Ian, it's much more of underneath, running these drag routes. He's still enough of an athlete that when he gets man coverage, those are almost automatically going to be a first read target for Trevor Lawrence. And then if you look at him against zone, he's the guy that gets to set down in these little spots between the linebackers and safeties or corners. And he is a guy that Trevor Lawrence completely trusts. We saw that show up this weekend, a 29% target share. You mentioned it. That equals 10 targets in that game, a 9.1 utilization score. And this is a guy that averaged 13.8 fantasy points per game last season, 20.2 on the weekend in week 6. So when you're looking at Engram, mid-range, tight end one, maybe in this season, he's more of a high-end tight end one. But I'm looking at historical profiles, guys. You have to remember that's the context I'm talking about. And so I would say mid-range tight end ones is grade the rest of the way. And if you have him, man, what a sight for sore eyes. Actual tight end production in the year 2024.
What a time to be alive indeed. Also set up fairly well against the Patriots here this Sunday morning in London. Jabril Peppers on that commissioner's exempt list, and they also have some other DBs banged up with various injuries. So Evan Engram back in the tight end one ranks. And now, Dwayne, let's get to some waiver wire goodness right after this word to our friends at DraftKings. A chill in the air, leaves falling to the ground in football every weekend. That is what fall is all about, and you can make each weekend even more exciting by getting into the action with our partners at DraftKings, the #1 place to bet on touchdowns. And right now, all new customers who bet $5 will instantly get $200 in bonus bets. All you got to do is download the DraftKings Sportsbook app and sign up using our promo code FANTASYLIFE. The crown is yours. Again, that is $200 in bonus bets instantly, and you can stay in on the action and use your $200 in bonus bets to bet anytime touchdowns on DraftKings. Again, the place to bet touchdowns. If sports betting is not yet available in your state, don't worry. You can still join in on all the fun with DraftKings Daily Fantasy and have the shot to win cash prizes. Download the DraftKings Sportsbook app now. New customers use our promo code FANTASYLIFE and bet just $5 on any wager to get $200 in bonus bets instantly. That's promo code FANTASYLIFE only at DraftKings Sportsbook. More utilization report goodness on the way, everyone, presented by DraftKings, by the way. Dwayne, let's get to some of the biggest names on the waiver wire, and you have a stack for us. We mentioned the Jaguars offense, some good things going on there, but as we know, that defense really has been a complete problem, especially in the passing game. And now we have Drake Maye and Pop Douglas coming to London to potentially take advantage of that and help our fantasy lineup. So talk about the rookie QB and apparently his #1 wide receiver.
Yeah, so when we talk about May, the big thing here is his ability on the ground, Ian, and we covered it, as we covered the draft, as we covered, all the prospects getting ready for the draft. One conclusion I know we both came to, on our own as we were studying the prospects before we came back together was, wow, Drake Maye, actually behind Jaden Daniels, is the next best prospect in this class as far as what he can do on the ground. Now, guys, he's not Jaden Daniels. We're not saying that, but the numbers were a lot closer than what you would think. He's a guy that's been using the design run game and also very willing to scramble, and that showed up immediately in his first game on the field, a 12% scramble rate. That led to 38 yards rushing. And now you think about that, Ian, you're like, 38 yards. Who cares? Well, that's 3.8 fantasy points, guys. Those are freebies. Now, take a quarterback that pure passing gets you 16 fantasy points. Like that. That's something that we see quite often. Well, now you're at a 20-point performance. It makes a difference. It just adds up. It's really hard for guys that run as often as what Drake Maye might to honestly finish outside the top 12 quarterbacks. So he's a guy that I advance really quickly up the ranks. Normally, I take guys through step by step by step, but we've just seen this rushing stuff be too much of a cheat code to mess around with it. We've got such a long history of it. Even if he struggles as a passer, he's still going to be a guy that's going to be right there as a borderline QB1. Now, look, the upside in the passing game, I think it's extremely limited, Ian. I mean, when we look at these weapons, I don't think there's anyone you and I look like that we're like, oh, man, like that could really be the straw that stirs the drink. It's going to be a challenge. But still, he threw for 243 yards this last weekend in his first outing. Were there some bad things? Yeah, he threw some picks. He lost a fumble. He got strip sack fumble, by Danielle Hunter. I mean, he held onto the ball too long. But he did energize the offense, man. 243 yards. You would have thought that was not possible 2 weeks ago with Jacoby Brissett. It wasn't possible 2 weeks ago with Jacoby Brissett. So the other thing you get here is you get a Jaguars matchup, man. The Jaguars have been the #1 fantasy boost to quarterbacks this season per our DVP tool over on FantasyLife. 4.8 additional points to the opposing quarterbacks over what they typically average. So this is a really great spot for Drake Maye. If you've got a bye week for maybe you've got Caleb Williams and he's been getting hot for you, you're not going to get to have him. You have Dak Prescott. Drake Maye might be the guy in your lineup. And then there is a potential stack. I'm not saying go out of your way to get the stack, but maybe you need a wide receiver. Demario Douglas, man, over the last 4 games, Ian has a 25% target share. He's a guy that we saw do it at the end of last year. We feel pretty confident in his ability to earn targets. Yes, he gets to work as a slot. Yes, he gets mismatches as linebackers. Guess what happens when you get a mismatch against a linebacker with a quarterback actually willing to hold on the ball just a little bit longer and buy some time? A touchdown, a long touchdown where he outruns the linebacker. So that's pretty sweet for you. So when you look at Demario Douglas, his utilization score, over these last 4 games is really up, Ian, 6.5. And if we look at the range of outcomes on guys that have been in that range, 23% of the time, they have been a high-end wide receiver 3, 31% of the time a low-end wide receiver 3. So over 50% of the time, they've had that wide receiver 3 finish. Don't get crazy and expect more than that, but I do think there's a little more ceiling if Drake Maye continues to really push the ball like he did in this last game. At worst case, you end up with a wide receiver 4. I'm thinking 10 to 15% of your fab, depending on, your league. You guys can adjust that. Not a player you're going overboard with, but really a nice player you can plug into your wide receiver 3 role, especially in PPR formats.
And especially in this week 7 coming up, because after that we get the Titans and Bears. Not a situation we're necessarily expecting to be full of fireworks long term, but hey, Cowboys and Lions, there's a lot of guys that we were relying on those rosters on a bye, so you can certainly do worse than Drake Maye and Pop Douglas, even if it is just for 1 week. Another big waiver wire name, Dwayne, you mentioned the bunches of running backs before, but Trey Benson, someone that maybe we should also be keeping an eye on. Did not get an official report on the James Conner ankle issue yet, but we did see with him missing some time in week 6, Trey Benson emerged as the early down complement.
Yeah, and so when you're thinking about these players, like the way I assign fab is I think about, number one, the talent. Well, Trey Benson, he's a day 2 NFL pick. Hasn't always looked great in all the film that we've looked at, this preseason, that one game, I remember everybody making fun of him. But the next game he came out and played much better. Right. So you have to understand these guys are young. He can get better with extra playing time, but they've invested in this player and they think that he's talented. And the other thing you're looking at is a potential time horizon. How long could I get this player for? Well, we've got James Conner dealing with an ankle injury, Ian. He'd also fumbled. We're not saying that James Conner's getting benched, but we also have the Cardinals headed in the wrong direction in the win-loss column. I mean, this is a team that as the wins pile up, and if James Conner's getting banged up, they could be incentivized to also want to get Trey Benson on the field for reasons other than just the injuries. So I think the time horizon here is a little bit more open as far as, okay, how many games could I start to get usage out of Trey Benson? Right now, it might look like, oh, it's only this week. But if he plays well and they lose again, they might say, well, let's go ahead and give Trey Benson half of this workload. There's just a lot of ways that Trey Benson ends up with more carries with the scenario that we have going on right now with the Cardinals. And for example, like you look at that versus Isaac Guerendo. Okay, like Jordan Mason, we know once he's back is taking that role away, and it's a shoulder. It's not like a hamstring or something like that. We also know we're eventually going to get CMC back. I like the 49ers offense more. But if I think about the rest of the season, I think Trey Benson probably has a better shot at scoring you fantasy points than Guerendo. Now, if Christian McCaffrey, can't come back for some reason or ruptures his Achilles when he comes back, you're going to wish you had Guerendo. So those are the kind I know, knock on wood, but we don't want to make all the dogs freak out, in the Hartitz and McFarland households. But whenever you look at it, you got to think about those things. So the point being, Trey Benson shouldn't be available on all these waiver wires. He might be giving you a spot start this weekend, and he also has the ability to continue to grow his fantasy value as we go. Ian, he's available in 81% of Yahoo leagues. Ooh. And another one that I don't think you're going to have to put a lot of fab on. He's not a guy that's getting talked about a lot this weekend in all the different waiver wire articles across the industry.
Wouldn't necessarily expect a 90% snap rate or anything if we do see Conner, completely out of the picture. Amari DiMercato is there. But I do think, Dwayne, we can feel a little more confident in this being closer to a Ray Davis situation because Trey Benson did demonstrate the ability to be a solid pass catcher during his time at Florida State, something that we haven't seen the same way out of guys like Tank Bigsby and Cam Akers, who we saw them have a bit rougher times, trying to separate from that, more pass down specific back.
Yeah, absolutely. So, and the thing is with some of these, like, yes, DiMercato is a good passing down back, but once they switch to that mode of we want to see what we have in Trey Benson, they're not going to care about that as much anymore. So that's the other thing you just have to factor in.
Now time for some other waiver wire names, Dwayne, who might not be available in your league, pal. That said, apparently, according to Yahoo availability metrics, they are indeed only 40 to 60% owned. Starting things off, coming off the bye, Chiefs. Wide receiver 1, I guess, in the year 2024. Juju Smith-Schuster, Dwayne, available in 65% of Yahoo leagues, and someone that we should be paying attention to.
Yeah, an 8.1 utilization score in the last game. Now, 66% route participation. He's mostly getting there because he scored the fantasy points and he had a 24% target share. So on one hand, Ian, you got a guy that I don't think is going to continue that. He's not going to score 20 fantasy points per game, and I think most people realize that. There was an issue where Tyrann Mathieu fell down on a play. There's another play where they just forgot to cover Juju. Over 70% of his yards came on, 80% of his yards came on those two plays. But On the other hand, it is Andy Reid. If anybody can get you lost in the shuffle and get you some open looks, it's freaking Andy Reid, and we know that Patrick Mahomes is going to find you. So in this role in 2022, Ian, whenever the Chiefs really needed someone to step up, and Juju was 2 years younger, he averaged 12.5 fantasy points per game. Not great, but that's a wide receiver 3, and that's what I put him at here. He's a guy that I would bet anywhere from 15 to 25%, depending on the size of your league. You got the bye out of the way, and you're at least saying there's a chance. Right now, they don't have anyone else. Xavier Worthy's not getting it done.
We'll also have some Packers wide receivers getting their situation dwindled down with Dontavian Wicks now week to week. Obviously, Dwayne, everyone loves Jaden Reed and is starting him, but Christian Watson available in 59% of Yahoo leagues and Romeo Dobbs in 65%. Looking pretty nice with upcoming matchups against the Texans, Jaguars, and the Lions before their week 10 bye.
Yeah, I slightly prefer Christian Watson because I think the talent profile is stronger. He's a guy that can hit you with the big scores, and he can just load up a box score on less. But Romeo Dobbs is the guy that's actually getting more playing time in. So he's the guy that plays almost every play out there with Jordan Love. So there's really pros and cons to each guy. I see the higher upside with Watson, but both are really boom bust wide receiver 4 types. They don't have real strong target earning ability, but they're attached to Jordan Love. They're attached to the Green Bay offense. So there's always a chance. And if somehow this thing got dwindled down where one of them couldn't play, the week after next, and we're down to now just Jaden Reed and this player, and maybe, at that point we'd have Bo Melton stepping in, you're going to feel more confident in that player. So again, boom bust wide receiver 4s heading into this weekend, but that can change.
Sticking with that Packers offense, Dwayne, you're interested in buying low on Josh Jacobs, someone who has had good volume. That said, just one finish better than the RB21 so far this season. You expect that to improve here in the upcoming weeks.
Well, the thing here, he's running back 28 on the season and fantasy points per game at 12.3. There's no way he's finishing anywhere close to that. Now, I can't tell you whether you're going to get a league mate that's willing to actually sell him to you as a running back 3. If we go over and we check out fantasycalc.com, you actually see people are still kind of holding Josh Jacobs as where they're willing to trade him. They're not willing to trade him that low, but I would definitely go kick the tires because he is going to regress positively. If you look at his comps over the last 4 years, Ian, they've averaged about 15 fantasy points per game. That's well above where he's at right now at 12.3. And if we look at him, man, 52% of the time they were a running back 2, 20% of the time they end up finishing up as running back 1. So I would say if you can trade for Josh Jacobs, even as a low-end running back 2, so like, somewhere between like 18 and 24, if that's the kind of price tag that you can get on him, I still think there's plenty of upside that at a minimum you're probably getting that. But if not, you could still could have a chance to get a high-end running back 2 or a running back 1. So if you can get him at that price tag, I would very much be trying to trade for Josh Jacobs. Again, attached to the Packers offense, man. They rank 4th in the league, averaging 401 yards of total offense per game. So any part of that offense you can get, you want to. And I still think that Josh Jacobs is an absolute central figure sitting in the center of this thing. And he is the kind of guy, Ian, where I say, hey, 20% of these guys have gone on to be running back 1s. I think the chances are higher, actually, for Josh Jacobs because this offense is just so good.
And Dwayne, let's close things out with one last buy low. But first, we're putting our dynasty hats on for Ladd McConkey.
Yeah, man. Ladd McConkey in a different simulation, as you like to say, Ian. I love that saying from you. This might be a wide receiver 1 in fantasy football this year, but he's only averaging 10.6 fantasy points per game. But I'm going to tell you this, Ian, it's not his fault. This dude has a 26% target share and a 32% air yard share. That is in the zip code of a player like Amon-Ra St. Brown. What's the difference? We're dealing with an offense that we already talked about, wants to run the ball all the time, and they're one of the slowest offenses in the league. They don't run a lot of plays. 29th in plays per minute over expected. Hey, you like that stat? It's a really cool stat you can find in the Team Styles tab over in the Utilization suite of tools at FantasyLife.com. So really it just comes down to this team wants to run the ball, and they don't run a lot of plays, and that's the thing that's holding back McConkey. So he is the opposite of DK Metcalf. DK Metcalf has all those things working in his favor. McConkey has all those things working against him. But long term, do we really think that that's going to hold McConkey down? So I look at him as being a guy that in Dynasty, I want to buy that talent profile. Not so sure Harbaugh's going to change his mind about his scheme this year, but over time, as that roster changes, we could see more passing from the Chargers, and that would be huge for Ladd McConkey.
just very impressive after the catch as well. Lab McConkey, get him before, again, that price gets too freaking high. Guys, that is going to wrap up this edition of the Fantasy Life Show. Dwayne and I will be back tomorrow with Chris Allen talking about the biggest questions ahead of Week 7. And until then, just have a great freaking day. Let's live life to its fullest. So for Dwayne, for producer Matt, for producer Kelsey, I'm Ian. Thanks again for tuning into the Fantasy Life Show. And until next time, take care, everybody.